So, Rose, welcome to Inside Live from Live Labs in Freeman. And what we're doing is we're doing a new series talking to innovators in the event world. And we've heard great things about you. Our goal is to share the knowledge of innovators. And today we'd love to hear a little bit about you, your background, what you're doing at RingCentral, especially in the event space, and what you're thinking about the future.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much for having me on. My name is Rose Maugeri, and I lead global events for RingCentral. VP of Strategic Events is my title. And I have a team of 6 people right now. And, an original goal was to come on board about a year ago and up-level the presence that RingCentral had at events, really start looking at the ROI of that decision to invest in in-person events, and then making some decisions on what the portfolio should look like going forward. So that's kind of like what the past year has been about. It's like really just making sure that we have a lot of hard analytics behind why we're doing things and what we're getting out of them, and then making forward-looking decisions on where we invest our dollars. With COVID and the change in the world, of course, in-person events have gone away for the most part, and we're patiently waiting to see when they come back, and they will. But in the meantime, my team has made this hard pivot into the virtual space so we can continue to add value to the company. And I think where we're in a unique position versus something like field events is that we're really about multiple things. My team delivers not only lead gen and acceleration to close activities, but we're also around brand amplification. And so it's really trying to make sure that we put the brand in the best light in the virtual arena. There's a lot of competition for attention. Everybody's gone virtual, and that's so much easier to access than flying to a city or those kinds of, or driving to a hotel to see us in person. So it just is a little bit of a mind share that we have to get to. So we're really trying to focus on what's that consumer thought process. We're a B2B company at the end of the day, but we're really taking a B2C approach from our acquisition strategies and then delivering solid B2B performance and solid B2B messaging and use case for our customers to understand why RingCentral should be the vendor of choice when they think about unified communications. And we are the #1 unified communications provider in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. But most people have never heard of us, or they think the doorbell company, Ring.
Right. No.
Yeah.
That makes sense. No, that's a great background. And it's interesting, the B2B, kind of B2B is where your audience is now, but really sort of getting into the mindset of B2C.
Yeah.
Since especially now our B2B is in our B2C world, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
It's sort of everything's merging.
Yeah, and when you think, you look at our technology, today we're talking to each other over the laptop, and that's great. But the reality is, I have a RingCentral app on my phone. If I wanted to get up and go to the store while we were talking, we can seamlessly transfer this conversation, this whole meeting instance, to my phone and take it with me. And then we can transfer it back. So, we recognize that everybody lives on their device for the most part. And so it's making sure that you have that business laptop experience or the desktop experience paired with, the realities of our life and living in a mobile world, and that it's all ubiquitous and seamless. At the end of the day, as users, we're human beings, we want to be able to just get up and go and do. And you want, like your car, to start, you want to be able to get up and go where you want and get back, and you don't have to worry about it breaking down or not being there for you. Your mobile technology is the same. Your communication strategy is the same.
Quick question just on what you just said, which is, you said that right now, that you're effectively a B2B company, but you're working in a B2C context. Can you talk a little bit more? Because we hear that all the time, and we believe that, and we understand it, we think. But it would be great to hear someone explain, because a lot of times the B2B mentality just looks at the customer base as the B, not the C.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's very interesting to us that within a huge new emphasis, sort of a disintermediated emphasis now going directly to the C, and the tools of the consumer or of the C are now the ones that the B is using, right? Like you're sitting at home, but you're at work.
Yeah.
And I'd love to just hear why and how then do you articulate a B2C strategy when effectively you've spent most of your adult life as a company articulating a B2B strategy?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. And when I say B2C strategy, what I mean from an event perspective is, we're launching a whole new series of virtual events as part of our pivot from in-person. And we've built this kind of pyramid strategy where the baseline is a web magazine. And it's a video-based magazine. It's not like page turning, but this video magazine has a professional host, and it feels, I described it to our executive staff as think Entertainment Tonight, but backed by B2B proof points. So we've got the excitement, we've got the good names on, we've got general interest. I mean, clearly, we're still talking to folks who have an interest in unified communications and collaborating over distances and things like that, which is, at our core who we are. But we're presenting in a way that feels very familiar and very friendly. And like I would sit down and watch this TV show on my TV if I was watching a network. And so that when I say B2C approach, that's what I mean by that. And then, but we still build all the content and everything you need to be successful at work and to make your business succeed into the process.
And how does that move, which sounds brilliant, and I can't wait to watch it. How does that move help you with the B2B relationship?
It makes us feel like a friend, right? Right now, again, we're actually, much bigger company than even Zoom, but Zoom is becoming an adjective, like, oh, I Google something, or I'm Zooming when you mean you're doing video conferencing. That's only happening, not because we don't have a more superior position in the marketplace or a better product. It's happening because we focus all of our energy on the product and not marketing. And so, what we need to get to is a point where people think, oh, I need to get on a collaboration call like we're doing right now. I need to RingCentral. That's a little bit of a mouthful, but it's the same kind of concept. But folks, when they started having that need, especially like during COVID, Zoom was the friendly choice at a consumer level. And now we need to make that thought process head towards us at RingCentral.
It's fascinating.
So your Entertainment Tonight model is really kind of a broadcast model, which is a little bit of a pivot, especially from what folks are thinking about of just sort of porting an event. Oh, we take it from here and we put it online. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that. And I think even your background, I think I read that you have some of this in your background too, broadcast.
Yeah, I came to events, well, I won't say late in life, because I don't want to date myself, but I came to events from television and originally television engineering. And then I went into managing television stations within corporate environments. I've spent my entire career in high tech in one form or another. And so to me, television is very familiar. And the pivot made sense in my head to try to make it something that, like, if I sat here and think of myself, I don't have a very long attention span, and I like to be entertained, and I like things to be intriguing and make me think. And so how do you take that kind of perspective of broadcast TV and shift it to the business world? So that's what we're trying to accomplish. And I think it also helps because, like I was saying earlier, how I explained the strategy and the plan to e-staff was to use examples that they knew. Entertainment Tonight, everybody goes, oh, I get it now. So it's like, it's a very familiar, very ingrained thought, TV at our home. And so I think it'll just be more appealing to people in the long run. We need to make sure we're short, sharp, and shiny. It's no more of the 60 to 90-minute keynotes that you can't even pull them off stage when they know they should be done. This is, if it's live, great, but they still have a time limit. But we're really looking at how TED Talks have influenced the world, right? We consume information radically differently on the internet because we can. Right? There's nobody watching us get up and walk out of a 10,000 person auditorium if we're bored. We just click away. And the same goes for the stuff we're doing on the web. Not only does it have to be visually compelling and have good content, but it has to be orally compelling, because I could jump to another tab and still listen to you. So we need to make sure that what we're saying, as well as what we're showing on a PowerPoint or in some other visual element, is compelling. Because at the end of the day, the object is to not lose the viewer. And so even if we end up splitting their time, and most people multitask, we know this, I'm no different. We want to make sure that we keep them in the multitask moment, because at least we're continuing that conversation at some level.
So we used to have this idea that, oh, I can't make it to the show, but you know what? They're simulcasting the keynote. I'll check on for that, and then let's text later, and you can tell me if anything else interesting happened. That's just a for instance. Seems like here what we're saying is it's not a live stream of the keynote anymore. It's actually rethinking what the keynote is in a way that you're able to present it with little bits and bytes and headlines and clickbait, as it were, but make it really like appealing for people to kind of go at the industry and at their work in a much more similar way to the way they consume the rest of the media in their life and how they organize themselves. So that makes a lot of sense. One of the implications of that, though, is that when we go back, as they say, it's not going to be, or is it going back to what we had before? Or is some of this stuff that we learn works going to stay here and going to actually present a very new idea of an event as just part of something else rather than a standalone?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a combination. I think what we're going to see is a hybridization. I don't think we're going to ever go back to what we had before, but I think we're going to learn a lot and we're going to change it. The other thing I think when we go back to in person is all of a sudden we need to think about not just that keynote, but like the conference as an entity. How do we envelop the virtual audience? When I was at Cisco, I brought online their first broadcast for Cisco Live. I built their first on-site TV studio and the programming and all of that kind of stuff. And one of the things we really focused on was field reporting. So we had people in all of the places that you couldn't go to as a virtual attendee. And we did little, 3 to 5 minute man on the street interviews, or we did conversations with demo techs, or just anything that seemed like a bright shiny object that they couldn't normally see, behind the scenes and keynote kind of activity, because you start to paint a picture of what's intriguing to be there in person, right? There's always an element like I truly believe in person will come back. It's just a matter of when. And then how does virtual act as a companion and a feeder to that process? And I think the live events then need to feed back into the virtual events to show you're getting this great opportunity, but this is what you're missing by not buying the pass and coming with us on the ride.
I love the idea of field reporting. I think that's one of the things that I think a big opportunity for companies is to actually get their audiences. And again, this is kind of that tribe building.
Yeah.
Let them start coming together. And I actually think by going out in the field and starting to report and actually even encouraging different groups to come together, it's just a really nice way to pull it all together. So I haven't heard that before. And I think you actually have a unique background by having the kind of the tech and the broadcast and the marketing background to really pull this together. That's exciting.
Interesting.
One of the things that we're also doing is we're standing up a call for participation. So independent, normally you focus that around your user conference or something else like that, right?
I love that.
We're standing up a call for participation to say, hey, customers, partners, whomever, send us your stories. And, we'll have some pre-qualifying questions to make sure they kind of fit what we're after. But getting, third-party advocacy is more powerful than anything we could say about ourselves. And so really and then making them want to be part of the process just kind of feeds into that loyalty and evangelism, because that's part of the brand amplification, right? I can generate a lead, but I can't build loyalty and evangelism without interaction and buy-in. And so we need to have.
I love it. We've been talking, Itamar and I've been spending a lot of time daily talking about this. And I think when you look at like Maker Faire, Burning Man, TED, all of those actually have a call for participation, and it truly is engaging community. And you're right, you qualify them, but some of the best stuff is going to come from that audience. And whether it's like using evangelists or whatever you use, or moderators, I think that you're the first company that I've heard that's been thinking about that. And I think you're so right on. Like that,
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Well, and that's where, taking the best practices from the in-person event can enrich virtual, because there's a lot of great things happening in both camps. We just have to figure out which ones are appropriate for which channel, and then kind of crossing the streams where it makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
What happens to sponsorship? Because it's interesting how, in TV, there's a whole model for that. And that was evolved over a long time with upfronts and with content being sort of auctioned to different advertisers and different sponsorship models, which actually underwrote the production costs of something. It's a very different tradition of sponsorship in its form than the sponsorship that happens at live events.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious as to what your thoughts are about how that transforms as a result of a bunch of this stuff we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually a great question. I mean, I think it starts with making sure that you don't build your initial budgets dependent on the income flow. And that's, again, what the conversation having with eStaff is like, hey, we've got this great strategy, but we have no data behind it. It's all new to us. It's all new to everybody. So I can't say like, oh, we got X number of scans in our booth last year at this show, and your scans would look like this. We don't have that data today. So it's really creating the sponsorship packages, setting a value to them, but then drawing your partners in for free year one so that you can get that data coming in, and then you basically build a perceived value that you then can substantiate and sell later. So it's really kind of a arc into that. The other thing that we are doing is we're creating unique packages that allow our sponsors to buy into different scenarios based on the type of show that we're putting together. So what you do at RingCentral Talk is going to be radically different than what you do at the one-day Connect Digital event. Just because they're different shows and there's different opportunities. But like at the Talk level, which is the news magazine, the video magazine, what we're looking at is, okay, today's topic is the future of telehealth, which is, healthcare right now is a hot topic, and we have a big position in that. So, we look to all of our partners that work with us on that topic, and maybe they're one of our interviews. Nobody's getting a stand and deliver. That's dead. But we are doing interviews and we are doing conversations because people want to be part of the conversation. They don't want to sit and listen to you talk for 5-7 minutes, right? And so, but we can say to whomever, this is a great opportunity for you. It's priced at this price point, and in addition, we'll put your logo on our website. Some of the very traditional kinds of exercises. But your opportunity to have a platform and have your say is in the context of the benefit of the arc of the content and the red thread that runs through all the way. Because that's the other thing. We're doing our RingCentral talks, our feeder mechanisms, so that kind of the spray and pray, if you will, and broad appeal content. They ramp up into what's called RingCentral Summit, which happens once a month. That's where we start doubling down and get into more of a 60-minute conversation where we start really rolling into the business elements. And then we cap off with the end-to-end portfolio event, which is to Connect Digital. So from a sponsorship perspective, we're asking them to sponsor the entire journey on that topic. So the floor is no longer who's got money, hey, everybody come down. It's who are the right people to support us, what's the price point, and here's how we're going to make sure you're part of the conversation, not just that track over there that nobody really wants to go to anyway. Because partners, that's always their worry, is that nobody wants to hear a partner sell.
It's interesting. It's almost like you're transforming square footage and real estate in the real space into bandwidth and broadcast time.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the digital space.
Yeah.
And those things have to somehow find a market equivalency or a currency conversion to understand impact.
Yeah.
That leads me to another critical question for all of this, which you answered partially by saying you give it away in year one in order to start getting your metrics in shape. What are the data possibilities here? I mean, we're finally in a place where at least Sherry and I have felt like the data collection on live events, while certainly an active thing, isn't providing the granularity of information that is critical for some of the kind of best learning. Whereas digital might allow us to do something very different. So I'm curious to think, what are you measuring now, or what are you looking forward to measuring that is actionable?
So our future state, like where we are today, is like phase 1, phase 0.05. It's not, I don't even know how to call it. But the end state that we're kind of, leading to is, I can follow you because you're logged in, right? On the platform. I can watch you go to the keynote. I can follow that breadcrumb to a track session topic. I can follow you to the expo floor and who did you visit? Did you do a meet the expert call? Was there any kind of chat conversations going on with the chat groups? Then I can devise scoring methodology that gives a value to each of those so that we can assign attribution and we can start, getting the MQLs and the SQLs and all those kinds of things in line. So corporate's happy. But then we can build recommendation engines and things like that says, hey, you know what, when you registered, you said that you are a contact center person. But when you came to our event, we saw you went and explored all of our office products. And we know the correlation between those two thoughts. So we can then say, have you thought about looking at this video? Or have you thought about this topic? We can have somebody call you. Because sometimes people are exploring what they need to know, not necessarily what they have. And through the data, we can put them together in the right place and say to the sales rep, this is a map of your customers' thought processes. And we think that you can go talk to them about XYZ. And we've already told them to go look at ABC. And they've done it or not. Because that's the other part. We can watch them go like, oh, did they click the link that we sent to them? Yes, they did. Or no, they didn't. So it's very exciting what digital can give us that the live events can't.
Wow, that's interesting. And that will probably be a continuing point of value after live events come back, to be able to get deeper knowledge about who's there and what you want to do with them.
Right. And if we do it right, the digital events are feeders into the live events. So we can follow that journey. Like Rose came to 5 virtual events and she finally bought into a physical event. And so we can match that journey and those touch points to success or not. And so that's where the supportive companion natureship that comes together between the two.
And then hospitality and VIP coupons and free drink and special ticket to this and free pass to that because you're the first time. Like there's a whole relationship there.
Yeah. We had a really big win recently with sales, closed a huge deal. And when we went back and we did the analysis of what are the touch points involved. So my team manages not only trade shows and sales events and all those kinds of user conference, all that kind of stuff. I also manage the sports engagements. So we have a big sponsorship at Chase Stadium, for example, Chase Center. We manage that suite and what goes on there. So we can monitor that sale. And they went to a hospitality event at Chase. Then they saw us and did a one-on-one meeting at one of our big trade shows. And then we followed up with a virtual executive briefing because by this time we're in COVID. And then within a week and a half, the deal closed bigger than they thought. And then we did a testimonial from a sales rep to say, yeah, it was all these things. And then this great VBC, we call them, for virtual briefings, VBC happened. And, we couldn't have done it without marketing. And that's the story too, internally, do you want to tell? Because it has to be a supportive relationship that way. Otherwise, I mean, we can't do what we do without sales because they sell everything, but marketing needs to be able to give sales the support to get there, right? So it's a very symbiotic relationship.
Fascinating. I mean, you feel a little bit like, the whole thing becomes an orchestration in some way. Internally, our enterprises have been organized to do things a certain way with certain silos and boundaries. that
Yeah.
aren't just external, but are also in the way we're organized internally.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you found that you guys are now needing to rethink, wait a minute, if we're going to do this in a kind of transmedia relationship way, where, as you know, you're like, did you text me that or email me that? Or did we say that on the phone? Like, I don't remember how I know it. It's all part of our relationship. Like, I'm not like,
is that in?
oh, that was at a live event, Rose. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care. I just know Rose.
Yeah.
And so, in a funny way, that's kind of what's now coming into the enterprise as a new way of looking at a 360 relationship through all of the company's channels. And the problem is now all those channels need to be in pretty good communication with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
And that would be interesting to hear what you guys are thinking. Like, I've thought for a long time now, like, is marketing and live events, how can digital and live events live as two separate departments? It seems like they've got to merge.
Yeah, and that's what we're having right now. And, again, I'm fortunate that I have a TV background. So the pivot was a lot easier probably for our team than some places where you've never had to have that experience before. And we're a small enough company that there isn't a whole digital event, team. So there wasn't that kind of butting of heads over, oh, is this yours or is this mine? Because it was just a matter of stepping forward and saying, yes, I can do it. Let me take a swipe at this. And I'm lucky my management let me.
Yeah, no, that's true. So you've been, Rose, you've been running, and I see that you've got a few virtual events coming up this month.
Yep.
And then it looks like August, September, you had on the books for some live events, which I'm sure you're still trying to figure that out. You're probably trying to plan for some sort of a virtual version of some of those bigger, because it looks like your bigger event was like this September, the retail event, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine you're starting to plan for that now. And actually, even retail is sort of an interesting. You seem to your company's strategy. It seems like you have like different tactics for different verticals.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of your bigger challenges. What's on your plate right now?
Yeah.
How do you pivot?
Yeah, and I'm fortunate that I work for a company that specializes in this kind of technology. So one of the things that my team does, and I have a event technology team, we've sat down and really kind of architected how do we use RingCentral to enable things like virtual roundtables, because that's a big one in the industries, is getting those core experts to talk over lunch or whatever. But so what we're doing is we're using RingCentral technology as an embed into a web page that has enriched data around it and has brand surround around it, and then we're also giving DoorDash voucher, right? So they still get lunch on us, but we facilitate this conversation like we're having now, right, over those kinds of things. So we're bridging a lot of the gaps around the industry things through kind of creative solving of that nature, but it's because I have this technology that I just turn it on and go.
Right. No, that makes it easy. That's for sure.
Rose, do you imagine that when this stuff comes back, that events will be serving a different purpose? In other words, obviously people's need to gather and to socialize and to transact, that's not going away. And people's love of being together and hanging out at a bar, that's not going away. And seeing old friends, that's not going away.
Yeah.
But it looks like in some estimates, at least for the big stuff, it really could be a while.
Yeah.
For the multi-thousand person stuff.
Yeah.
The over 5,000 crowd. That's a while, maybe. Like, could really, who knows? But it feels like that. Do you imagine that you guys will wait until you can kind of go back to that proven model and fill it with virtual until then, and then do the transition, obviously, in the way we've described? Or is there some intermediate, like 200 person thing, 100 person thing, something where you do a crazy feat or a kind of, amazing thing to watch for only 100 people, but then broadcast that to 20 million people, like, the stunt or whatever it is? Like, how are you thinking along the way? Or is it kind of, let's just install this approach, get good at this broadcast approach, and wait until we can really go back without the rigmarole of having unknown attendance and who knows who's freaked out and who's like
Right.
freaking out because they got sick when they were there or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
what's that? How do you guys think about that?
That's a great question. We actually just had that conversation recently with executives, and what we've agreed to do is, at least through the end of this year, hold off on any in-person events that we host. So any of our proprietary events. From a small group, 100 or less, we're going to kind of keep a watchful eye, because you can spin those up in fairly short time frames if we need to. But anything bigger than that, we're not even going to bother planning. We're just going to leave it be, and we'll stay virtual from that component. The other thing we're looking at is, how do we leverage hub and spoke? So, virtual can be in multiple places. So as long as the time zones can be relatively compatible, I can have a hub of speakers or, whatever, and broadcast out via the internet to multiple destinations that are live. So it can still be still live, but it's live at a distance. So it's still few to many, but it's just few to many at a distance. To your point, it doesn't ever replace the in-person need that we all have to see each other and socialize face to face. And I think what people are now realizing about in-person events is that's really the strength it has, right? You get all the other stuff so that your business feels warm and fuzzy and you feel good about why you were there and spending the money. But at the end of the day, you've probably seen it with big user conferences. You always see registration take a spike when you say Gwen Stefani's going to be there. Or this is going to happen, and try to hit those bucket list items for people, because those in-person experiences can't be matched. We're doing some things where we're partnering. iHeartRadio is one of our customers, and we're looking at how do we partner with them for 30-minute concerts online in the short term, because a lot of talent is going that direction. And being it's 30 minutes, it's online, all of a sudden it's within our reach from our cost perspective. And so it's kind of just trying to think outside the box and be creative on your feet and in the moment. And then when we do get to a point where we can start planning the in-person stuff, being agile enough and not holding on to or not having too much loyalty to the thought of the day. That's the other part, and this is just events 101. It's like, if you're lucky, 50% sticks to the wall, and being okay with that has to be the mantra you live by, right? You plan for 100% or 110%, and then you live in the 50. It's no different for this kind of stuff.
Totally. How do you feel like this has also affected sharing and partnerships? Like, do you think, there's always been a tension, I think, in the last years between a certain kind of disintermediated economy that really believes in gift giving and sharing as actually a way to generate revenue, but that you do it through a real relationship and a friendliness and a certain kind of, human to human kind of feeling. And there's a very long-standing, deep-rooted feeling in American business that's sort of like, are you kidding me? We don't give stuff away.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm interested in sort of understanding how you're feeling about those two modes, where obviously our bottom line is our ultimate goal here, but there's a lot of different ways and theories of how you get there.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in knowing what the role in your mind of actually sharing stuff, not charging for stuff, and really kind of giving people something that they value without asking for something in return is going to be a new way of doing business.
Well, I think we always are asking them for something in return, no matter what, because we're asking for their contact data. It's just not, we're not, maybe we're not asking them for buying a ticket or those kinds of things, but everything we do is around capturing that lead data. And then how do we, the tactics we're using to engage more deeply on site, for example, is only there so that we can say to sales, this is a more qualified lead than that. So put your attention here first, or BDRs go there because they came to our booth and we talked to them, but this person had an hour meeting with somebody on site. So that means that they score higher. So I think we're always asking our folks for something, which I think we need to keep in mind from a business perspective, because a lot of times we think we're not asking them for anything. And in today's world where unsubscribe is like really easy peasy to do, you need to be respectful of it, not only because of the law, but just because you need to respect people's wishes. And then in terms of giving them other things, I think, part of it is content. Make sure that you're giving them something that's worthwhile. Like, don't bait and switch and make this really wicked, great abstract, and then you don't deliver anything against it. Because that to me is just like wasting people's time and baiting and switching. And then we are doing gifting. And we've just stood up an e-commerce site where we give our attendees a code, and there's a predetermined selection that they can pick from. So it gives them a little bit of variety. They don't have to pick something that maybe doesn't appeal to them, or be handed something that they don't want. And then they can redeem it or not. And I will tell you, like for our virtual briefings, it's probably 50-50 as to whether people actually redeem it, but it's 100% appreciation. More people will say to us, thank you for even thinking of me in this time. And they never follow through with actually getting the item, but we accomplish recognizing them as people and that we appreciate them. And that's worth a ton.
Yep. No,
Great words.
Awesome. Great. Well, I think, gosh, we really appreciate your time and would love to come back and chat with you maybe after like a couple months. Let's see what's, because everything's changing daily, hourly for everyone. But you've actually raised a lot of great points, and I certainly appreciate it. And I think that our audience will appreciate it too, and would love to keep the door open and come back and hear what else you're learning. So
yeah,
you're awesome. It's such a frontier, and it's so interesting to be talking to the explorers now. I mean, in a funny way.
Exactly.
You're like, okay, here are the Rocky Mountains, and we're going to go over them, and let's go this way and see what happens. Yeah, yeah.
I tell my team all the time, because it can get discouraging when you're leading the way. It's hard. Change is hard. Even if you embrace it, it's like, it's a difficult thing. So I remind them, 2 steps forward, 1 step back is still 1 step ahead where you were before. And as long as you kind of put it in that positive context, it's okay that you took a step back, because we still made progress. Progress is the goal. It's not, and failure happens. It's how we learn. So Mom 101, I think.
Very true. Very true.